So let's talk about getting an overseas assistant versus a domestic assistant. Which should you choose? I've hired over 700 assistants over the last 15 years. I've hired in India, Pakistan, Philippines, Jamaica, all over the world, including United States and Canada. And the first handful of assistants I hired were just for myself. Since then, and since I cracked the code, the vast majority of the 700 assistants, I've actually helped other entrepreneurs get an assistant for themselves too. So huge range of industries, huge range of countries, and a very wide base of experience. And here's what I have experienced. Number one, the number one person to be thinking about here is not the assistant, it's actually you. You are the number one asset. When you are able to focus on your zone of genius, your business grows, you're happier, everything is better. We need a reliable mini-me type assistant who can take over the minutiae of your day-to-day, eventually take over your email inbox, your calendar, travel planning, those kinds of things, so that you can just focus on the big things. And it's not just them doing the work, but it's actually removing psychic load for you. It's a trusted assistant that is in a trusted situation where you just don't even think about it. You delegate it and it's just taken care of. I got to tell you, after reading the 4-Hour Work Week many years ago, I thought a $4 an hour assistant overseas was the answer. It sure sounded like someone from a developing nation for just a few dollars an hour was the answer. After all, for $4 an hour, even if it went poorly, what's the big deal, right? Unfortunately, I realized there were far more costs than just $4 an hour or $5 an hour or $10 an hour. There was the cost of me, my time, and my peace of mind. Very quickly, after I started working with my first ever assistants who were overseas, very quickly I realized that the difference of language and business culture created so many mistakes in their work and so many frustrations for me. I ended up going back and fixing most of the work that was done. It just made me think, why did I even bother with delegating this in the first place if I'm just going to have to go back and do the work myself? Then after that, the next problem that arose was I very quickly saw that because of the radically different time zones, it was basically impossible to get any kind of meaningful meeting time for us to get together, collaborate on what needs to happen, explain what it is I'm looking to get done. And even in the few moments when we did get meetings scheduled, it's like if I needed to talk to them in between meetings because a curveball had come up or I needed to answer other questions, they were sleeping, so they weren't available. And so then they would come online 5 hours later, and then after that they'd give me an answer, but I'd almost be at the end of my day, so I could only answer one thing. And all of a sudden, what should have been 3 or 4 points of contact over a day or two ended up being 3 or 4 points of contact over 5 days. And it was taking like twice as long to get anything done. The third really huge area where I started to feel the pain was actually around reliability. I had assistants overseas who just didn't show up. And the best overseas assistant I ever had, she was in India, and great English, super talented, educated, knew exactly what she was doing, always on top of it, always asking how she could help more and more and more. And then one day she disappeared. It turned out that there had been a political dispute between her, the politician from her neighborhood, like her representative, and the neighboring delegation or constituency. There was a fight between these two politicians. And in a strong arm move to try and intimidate one another, the neighboring politician had the electricity turned off to my assistant's neighborhood. So now my assistant had no internet, no electricity for an entire week. And I was messaging her all along, emails, Skype back in the day, et cetera, and I was just hearing nothing. All of a sudden she comes back with a flurry of messages 1 week later. Oh my God, Mr. Francis, I'm so sorry. Here's what happened. And it dawned on me that it didn't matter how good she was as an assistant, because the environment that she was in was not reliable. It didn't matter how good she was. So it's like, even if I got a great assistant from, a third world or developing country, just the mere fact that their environment was not reliable, unfortunately, made them unreliable. So, that relationship ended as well. And I was just sitting back, totally feeling frustrated and helpless when it hit me. It's just like every time there's mistakes that happen, or I have to redo things, or there's a misunderstanding or a delay of literally any kind, it's me with my time and my energy that pays the price. And that's when I realized that being cheap was one of the most expensive mistakes I'd ever made. I knew I needed help. There's no way I could continue living in my business trying to do everything myself. It just wasn't going to happen. There's only so many hours in the day, and I could only become so exhausted before I needed some help. And I just looked in the mirror and I said, you know what? Amateur hour is over. I am done with amateur hour. This has got to end. Now, I wasn't making a lot of money. I made only 39 grand in the year up until this moment, in the 12 months leading up to this moment. And I was also in big time debt. I was actually $200,000 in debt. I'd lost a lot of money in the real estate crash of 2008. I was also terrified to let go of control. I barely knew what to delegate. I was not exactly a rock star leader, at that time. Nonetheless, I just knew that if I was ever going to fulfill my potential, I had to get help. I saw this incredible quote. It said, "Hell is meeting the man I could have been." Oh my God. Hell is meeting the man I could have been. I don't want that uncomfortable experience, so fulfilling my potential requires getting help. So I went online. I found a North American assistant, someone in the United States, hired her, and you would not believe what happened. Within 1 year, my income went from $39,000 to $107,000. So I basically tripled my income. I at least quadrupled my productivity. I was able to delegate my email inbox, my calendar. You would not believe the amount of things that I could delegate. And maybe most importantly of all, it was someone I could trust to get the job done and get it done the right time, the first time. That's what freed me up to focus on doing more for my clients, learning my own trade craft to get better and better, and ultimately deliver more value for our customers and ultimately make more money for our company. So zooming out, when it comes to a right-hand assistant, that person who's supposed to optimize you, do not make my mistake. Do not be cheap. You got to invest, because here's the thing. Even though an assistant is going to be an expense, technically speaking, ultimately your relationship with your assistant is the most incredible profit center, because it allows you, the number one asset, to be optimized, focused on your zone of genius, and able to grow the company like never before. Don't be cheap. Go domestic. You'll thank me later. Talk to you soon.